Hello once again, Niner faithful, and welcome also to any Vikings fans that may be joining us today. This Saturday will feature the first playoff game for Kyle Shanahan as a head coach, as well as the first playoff game Jimmy Garoppolo will be starting. With the number one seed, expectations are high with the faithful. While both teams come from different divisions, they couldn't be more similar. Both teams feature efficient yet often overlooked quarterbacks. Both teams rely heavily on an outside zone rushing attack. Both teams have multiple players at the skill positions. Both teams have two very good edge players, and both teams run a lot of zone defense using matching principles. And both teams have coaches on staff that were former offensive coordinators for Mike Shanahan. In my opinion, the biggest difference in the game will be how each offensive line performs. And this is where I give San Francisco the edge. On film, Minnesota's offensive line looks good, but not great, and they can be rather inconsistent. This is not the offensive lines of the Adrian Peterson era, which featured bigger guys running a power gap scheme. They look like a team trying to build the pieces for an outside zone-based scheme, but aren't quite there yet. An outside zone requires a lot of time in the system and quick guys with quick feet. Too often I saw Minnesota's offensive line pushed around. Against New Orleans, the run game was feast or famine. When they executed blocks, Dalvin Cook had big gains, but for the most part, they struggled getting any sort of consistent rushing attack going. On the flip side, San Francisco's offensive line has been a pleasant surprise this year, helping the 49ers have the number 2 rushing attack in the league without even having a true number 1 running back. The game will come down to which team can establish the run, in my opinion. I believe both quarterbacks will play well and efficiently, and both defenses will limit explosive plays. I may be a homer and a fan, but I do believe the 49ers have the edge in this game and will be moving on to the conference championship game. With that, let's take a look at some of the things to look for in the game. First, we'll talk about the outside zone and what needs to happen there. As you see on this play, when blocked well, the outside zone leads to nice gains. Dalvin Cook looks to be a perfect match for this outside zone type of scheme where it allows him one cut and running vertically down the field. He's a load to bring down and runs with violence, so clogging him up before he gets to the second level will be paramount. On this play, the Saints run a similar scheme to us in that it's a one-gap defense. Each player on defense is responsible for one gap. Here, the one technique is responsible for the A gap. In the outside zone to the weak side, here are the blocking assignments. The keys are the scoop blocks. If the center can scoop block the one technique, the play has a good chance. Number 24 also is responsible for the C gap. So when the play goes, he doesn't fill aggressively, and so there's a huge hole to that side. If the receiver cracks down on the inside defender, this is where the corner must fill that hole. But if we rewind it just a little bit, you'll see the center is able to scoop the one technique and seal him off, and it nets a big gain. So one way to give your players an advantage versus the outside zone is to have defenders exchange gaps they are responsible for. This puts a lot of pressure on the offensive line to identify exchanges in a fraction of a second that will change their blocking assignments. Here, New Orleans is going to pinch both defensive ends in and exchange linebackers over the top. Most of the time, defensive ends are the force defender, what's often referred to as outside contain. With an exchange, they slant inside, and a linebacker scrapes over the top and then becomes the force player. By doing this, you collapse the tackle and condense the set. You then make it really hard for a guard to get up on the second level on a linebacker running around the edge. Here we can see Cam Jordan slant down, Demario Davis exchange over the top, and the corner comes up strong in run support when he sees the run and his wide receiver come down on a potential block, and so the play is stuffed. Another way is something the 49ers have used in the past, and actually they used it in their last game. You can change up the front to provide a stouter front and allow your defensive line to control the line of scrimmage. Here we go back to a front we used a lot in 2017 and 18, the over front. You may have heard about the 49ers in the first 2 years under Saleh being a 4-3 under team. Well, they were as much an under team as they were an over team, but they bring the Sam backer, who's usually on the strong side, but is on the weak side here. That's a key difference in the over front versus the under front, but it's still a gap defense. Seattle is going to run a weak side off tackle or outside zone run. Same thing we saw in the first play from Minnesota. The key in this front will be the guard's ability to scoop block Armstead. You see Armstead does a good job of getting underneath the guard and stands him up, controlling his gap and not allowing the running back outside. If we go back, also you'll see Buckner beats his man off the snap and doesn't get scooped either. With the front side taken away and backside pursuit, the run is stuffed. Piggybacking off of the previous play, quick penetration by the D-line disrupts the zone scheme. Going back to the Green Bay game, which they're a team that's also a big zone blocking scheme team, they were looking to run a zone counter, something we run a lot as well and I've seen from the Vikings. Here, the nose tackle, DJ Jones, drives the center back, and a run that was meant to cut back has no cutback lane, and it's stuffed for no gain. Minnesota liked to attack New Orleans defensive backs when they were in nickel. Here, again, it's a gap scheme, so number 24 is responsible for the B gap. The Vikings will run a split zone run, where it looks to press play side but will bring a blocker back across the formation to seal off the edge and cut up inside. It's similar to a counter, but the counter looks to attack a C gap, and this looks to attack the B or A gap, whichever presents itself. You'll see at the snap, number 24 is hesitant to attack his gap, so as the play develops, Cook has a big hole to run through, and then you can see the violence with which he runs. So if we're able to contain the run game, we force Minnesota into more drop-back situations. Their tackles haven't been great in this situation throughout the year. Here, Minnesota is in 3rd and 8, and so they're going to look to get a deeper developing play. They're going to run a deep speedo concept. If you've seen my channel, you'll recognize it. It's something Walsh and then Holmgren and then Shanahan all ran in San Francisco. But it involves a clearing route, a flat route, and a deep over or speedo route, and it looks to clear out the deep zone and get a receiver then running into that open space. The hard part is that it requires time to get a receiver that far across the field, so teams will run this off play action like we do most of the time to buy some time, or they will keep an extra man in to block. Here, the Vikings keep Rudolph in to block as they're going to look to give help to Cam Jordan's side. This ends up putting Rudolph one-on-one on a defensive end, and that's not good. He gets driven back into Cousins before the play can fully develop. This is where having D Ford back will be huge for the 49ers defense. Early in the year, teams were slanting towards D Ford's side. If we go back to the Browns game, you'll see that's what happens here, and Bosa is left one-on-one with a tight end, and it doesn't end well for the Browns. But what should we look for from Kyle and Jimmy in the passing game? Minnesota plays a lot of shell defense, meaning they play a lot of cover 4 and cover 3 zone, looking to limit explosive plays down the field. This should bode well for us as Jimmy and Kyle have been excellent in the short passing game all year long. One way New Orleans attacked Minnesota's defense is by using the Ohio concept. It's a passing concept we run a lot and works well against any 2 safety defense, meaning cover 2 or cover 4. It's a simple concept. You run a protection release fade. Protection release just means the receiver will attack the outside shoulder of the defender, looking to turn his hips towards the sideline to protect the quick out, and then followed by a quick out. It looks to put the outside defender in a vertical stretch. Here, you're going to see the Saints run it against cover 4. And then again against cover 4. And then again against cover 2. For us, against the Browns, here's an example of our Ohio concept. Sometimes we vary it up by having Kittle run a stick route instead of just a quick out, but it's the same concept. The key is that the offense has to be patient and take these short completions. And maybe you'll get one of these guys who are great run after the catch guys to break a tackle and get a big gain. So then when Minnesota goes cover 3, there's 2 of Kyle's favorite passing concepts off play action that I see us using. They're very similar in design, but are just a little bit different. The first is the Yankee concept. The Yankee features a post route, and then a deep crossing route, and comes off play action. The Yankee is designed to get into the seam area of the field and take advantage of aggressive linebacker play versus the run. The post route looks to clear out the deep safety, and the run fake to pull up the linebackers, and then get the ball into the area where the linebacker would be playing in a hook curl zone. Here you'll see how the run fake occupies everything underneath and opens up the seam area, which Jimmy G hits Emmanuel Sanders. A slightly different play that will look the same but is a little bit different is the pin concept. There's a couple differences with the pin. One, the pin is a post plus in, so the depth of the underneath route and angle of attack on the defense is a little bit different. Two, it can be a drop back pass or off play action, whereas the Yankee is almost always off play action. And we ran it as a drop back pass against the Vikings in 2018. Third, it looks to vertically stretch the deep middle safety. Here, we're going to run it with Marquise Goodwin and George Kittle off play action. The run fake pulls up the underneath defenders, and notice how Kittle squares his route off more than Sanders. That's the indication of the pin versus the Yankee. And when Jimmy turns around, he reads the deep middle safety, who he sees shading the post and looks to hit Kittle. This was earlier in the year, and Jimmy did have some pressure coming at him. However, if he holds this ball about half a second longer, the pin will develop and open up the post. Look for Jimmy to hit the post to Deebo Samuel in this game. Last time, Harrison Smith played the in route on this concept very aggressively. I believe if Jimmy looks him off to the in route, we could have a huge gain on the post. But as great as that would be, big plays won't come easy against this Vikings defense. They're fast, smart, and physical. They have been able to match wits with even the best the NFL has to offer. On the Breeze interception last week, I was really impressed with the team defense. Sean Payton can draw up some really impressive plays. Here, he's going to combine different passing concepts together to create 4 passing concepts on one play. That way, the defense has a really hard time cluing in on what they're trying to do, who they're trying to stretch, and what the play they're actually trying to run. Because, as you've seen, some of these passing concepts are widely used, teams have to start intermixing these concepts together so that defenses can't just know what's coming. I apologize if this overloads with terminology, but it would be really long to go through and dissect every single one of these. But first, to the bottom, you have a switch concept with a post and corner route. Inside, you have a levels concept with a short in and deep in. Mixing the timing of the post, corner, and short in across the field, you create a flood concept. And then, the post with the deep in creates a pin concept. What you have are 3 vertical stretches and 1 horizontal stretch, and that's a lot coming out of defense. Minnesota is playing cover 3, but will be using the same matching principles that our defense uses. First, I'll highlight the linebackers. Kendricks and Barr play this really well. Kendricks lets the short in route go, and Barr is then going to match it across. That's a classic cover 3 under matching. Then Kendricks will pick up the running back. Rhodes then matches the deep in. To do this, he has to trust that the flat defender to that side will match Cook if he were to run a wheel route. On the other side, Harrison Smith identifies the vertical release and will match the route up the seam. So with the other routes matched, the deep safety doesn't bite on the deep in and is able to give inside help to the corner against the post route. And they've got Breeze to throw it to the one guy that's double covered for an interception. That's really, really good team defense and coverage. So what this means is that execution in the run game will be huge for the 49ers. You're going to have a tough time dropping back and passing against these guys. That's why I feel we do have the edge, because I think both teams will struggle dropping back and passing a lot. Not because I don't believe in the quarterbacks, but because I believe in both defenses. While the storylines have been about Jimmy G and Kirk Cousins, the real battle is going to be at the line of scrimmage. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. We all know how big this game is, so I'm looking for you faithful to keep your game day traditions, and anyone who will be at Levi's Stadium to scream until you have no voice left. Let's leave it all out there in the fandom, as we aren't guaranteed a next game. As always, if you'd like to support the channel in any way, I'll have some links for that below. And until next time, hopefully a review of a playoff win, go Niners.